I decided I wouldn't start filming until today, and I would just, get a start on the book last night, and then I read like a third of it. Hi everyone, my name is Maddie. Welcome back to my channel, or thanks for joining us if you're new here. I did have a reading vlog that I had already planned to be doing over like my reading week, and then my life kind of imploded and I honestly couldn't focus enough to do any reading, so I had all this content but there was no reading in it, and I figured it didn't make sense to post a reading vlog that doesn't have a lot of reading in it. But I did just get the new Aristotle and Dante book, and I was able to pick up the first one at the library because I actually don't own a copy of it, and I really wanted to reread the first book because I read it about 3 years ago now because I borrowed it from my roommate in first year because she really loved it. I remember bits and pieces of it, but I don't remember all of it, so obviously I want to reread it before I read the new one. So this is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. This is about how thick it is. And then we have Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World, and I want to appreciate the extra chunk on this one. It's definitely got like a good maybe extra 100 pages or something on it. I started rereading Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe last night, and I feel like I forgot the difference between Aristotle and Dante, which sounds weird. But if you like asked me to describe who was who, I couldn't tell you who was narrating in the book before I started rereading it last night. And I really don't think Aristotle's name fits him, but I think that's the point, because he's kind of like this scared, shy, nervous boy who hates his life and hates the world and hates himself, which I got a thing for characters like that who like definitely are having some mental health teenage life struggles, and there's a certain affinity that I'm like, I got you. So I think the idea that he has this name of this like big philosopher and feels like he's supposed to be doing all these big things really is like key to the story and to like his development as a character. In particular, I don't know why, but I forgot the book takes place in 1987. I seem to be really bad for that. I got like almost all the way through Eleanor and Park, and I think it wasn't until they mentioned the release of a specific comic book that I was like, wait, that's what year it is? Oh. That makes a lot more sense now. So one of the things that I was thinking about with this book taking place in 1987 is phone calls. So like when I was growing up, I didn't have a cell phone. Like if you wanted to hang out with your friends, if you wanted to talk to your friend, you'd call them on your phone. Like I still have certain friends whose like home phone numbers I have memorized because of that. But when I got older, like eventually I was able to get myself an iPad, so I did a lot of messaging my friends that way, even before I had my first cell phone, which I didn't have till I was 14. It's odd to me to think about like being a teenager and like wanting to talk to your friend and just doing it on the house phone. I don't know if wireless phones were a thing in 1987, I should check that. But he's having this like whole conversation with Dante about his brother who's in prison, like on the couch in the living room, and I'm like, can't your parents hear you? Like, how do you have a private conversation on a personal house phone? I'm curious, because I also know that, like, I'm thinking, like, It's a Wonderful Life, where, like, her mom goes upstairs and picks up the other line, like, you can eavesdrop on people, too. That's a whole thing. I don't know. That was just, like, a very niche thing about the time period that I was like, huh. Interesting. I'm liking it more the second time around. I don't know what it was that I was appreciating it. I think part of the reason I got so far is because the book is very like conversational and dialogue based, which makes it go by really fast because some of the pages are really short, just back and forth dialogues, and it also just like flows because it feels like you're getting into the rhythm of the conversation, which makes it a very easy read. The other thing too is I really enjoy the way the book is like dealing with masculinity. Like Aristotle and Dante are both very like soft boys, I guess, but they're very much like struggling with this idea of like what it means to be a man, how they're supposed to be a man, how they're supposed to embody those traits, and like either recognizing something similar or something different of the way that they approach that within the other. And I think that's really cool too. And my phone ran out of storage, but I just got to the accident. I'll leave it there, so no spoilers for people who haven't read it. And yeah, we'll see where this goes. So I read a bit more and then I went to class. I think I kind of understand the nonsensical play that we read now. And now I have meetings, and now I'm gonna have my dinner and read a little bit more. And I'm just thinking in particular about Ari and how he is struggling with everything in some way, but I think he's struggling most with like loving himself and like wanting to be in this body and be who he is. And I'm just thinking about like the way that that accident forces him to not be able to run from it anymore, and also the way that he doesn't feel like worthy of love, and now that he feels like people are pitying him or they're only giving him the love because they feel like they need to, or he's a hero in some way, it makes him really uncomfortable because he doesn't like being the center of attention, but he also needs people in his life that he can believe want to be in his life, and he doesn't want them to be there out of obligation or some sense of that they owe him something. I got a lot of thoughts about that. We'll keep reading, see where we go. So I was reading Aristotle and Dante with dinner, really enjoying it, and then my body went, panic attack? It's just agoraphobia, being like, hey, you're going somewhere that you haven't been before, and you have to drive people, so you can't just leave. What if everything goes wrong? So now my stomach feels all wiggly. But the book, I don't know why I don't have strong memories or strong like emotional responses. I honestly think I must have been half asleep the first time I was reading it. This time I was making all these little faces, I was getting so excited. I swear I was writing down like every other page of quotes that I wanted to go back to. But I think the one thing that is really sticking with me is like the sadness that exists inside of Ari, and like not knowing how to let that out, or not knowing like when to tell people. There's a scene where he's like crying and he's like, I know my mom heard me in the other room, but she let me be alone, and like just that type of love to like know when someone needs to fall apart by themselves and like when you need to step in and help them, just really got to me. Also the kind of dualism between him and his father and the different types of wars that they have trapped inside them is really interesting to me, because his father's a Vietnam vet, so, and nightmares. There's a lot of like interesting dualism and like use of imagery in this. Maybe I'm gonna try and pack some stuff for tomorrow, and then I'm probably gonna try and read more, distract myself from the anxiety. I was putting some music on while I was packing because I have the song No Children? Is that what it's called? By the Mountain Goats. It's all over TikTok right now, stuck in my head. But I found a song that I'm like, oh my god, this is such an Aristotle song. And it's Not Your Summer by The Academic. And I just need to read some of the lyrics. It starts out, I want to go, I want to leave, I need some time away from me, and this is not an apology. Apologies aren't necessary. What is one of Ari's rules? Dante's not allowed to apologize to him. And then it goes on to say, if this is it, let this be it. I need some time to talk it out. Don't be surprised, don't be alarmed if first impressions start to let you down. And the chorus is, maybe it's not your summer, maybe it's not your year, maybe it's not as easy for you to walk away and disappear. Feels like your ears are burning. Did someone really call your name? Or maybe you were just daydreaming of somebody who could make your day. Sounds like somebody thinking of somebody else, but not wanting to admit it or write him letters. Yes, highly recommend you go and listen to this song, because the rest of it just gets even more Aristotle, and I was just sitting there listening to it like, damn, this song is perfect for this book. And now I will go back to reading said book and falling more in love with Ari and wondering why I didn't like immediately bond with him the first time I read it. Also forgot his dog's name is Legs, and I love it so much. You know, sometimes I forget how ace I am, and then I read about teenage boys asking other teenage boys how often they masturbate and if that's normal, and I am just terribly reminded of how asexual I am. I am not interested in having a conversation about masturbation with Dante. I am not interested in having a conversation about masturbation with anyone. Same, Ari. Absolutely same. Anyways, back to reading. Ari's giving me ace vibes. I'm trying to figure out if they're gonna get into this in the second book, or if this is just like a denial of sexuality thing. I'm curious. I'm curious to see what's gonna happen in the sequel now. It's accidentally 1:30 in the morning, but I'm done. I'll do a full review tomorrow, but I just had to share. My heart is very full. It's so good. Past me was an idiot. Alright, let's talk Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe before I start Aristotle and Dante, what is it? Dive into the waters of the world. I can never remember what the title of this book is. I think one of the things that I want to say that I really love about Aristotle and Dante is the fact that this is a book that is like ultimately an exploration of love. It's an exploration of like family love, as Ari really tries to grapple with his relationship with his parents. Dante kind of has this, I don't want to say not traditional relationship with his parents, but he's kind of trying to wrap his head around the fact that him and his parents like do get along, but there's still that like fear of disappointing them and like trying to grapple with that connection. But I think also it's like ultimately a story about like, and I'm gonna steal a little from my morale here, but this idea of like not being big enough to hold the love that we have for people. And I think that's something that like Ari really struggles with, is this fear of both losing the people that he loves and of not being enough, because there's so much emotion, so much desire, so much like yearning to protect these people that he cares for, and he doesn't know if he as like one person has enough in him to do that. And I think that's where Ari and Dante work so well together, is because Dante is kind of this sunshine character. Like he's so full of life, he's so full of emotion, and he's so like open, and he really wants to try and like embrace who he is and embrace himself. And I'm thinking particularly about like him not running away, like the symbolism of that particular scene, even though he knows that that's going to hurt him, and just kind of that he's this person who is willing to stand behind his feelings, like no matter the cost. And Ari is someone who is always running from them, like always trying to set up these rules and these boundaries, not necessarily like in a healthy way, but to like almost guard himself and close himself off from connecting to other people. And I think that was something in like his character that I really related to, and I honestly don't know why I didn't connect as much with this book the first time around. I think I was half asleep while reading it, which I've probably said a million times now, but that was something in him that like really resonated with me, is just this recognition that like loving people is such a beautiful gift, but it's also so scary. And then also having all of these emotions tangled up in yourself and not understanding where they're coming from. This like anger, this confusion, this like frustration, and that whole idea of like having a war inside you and like trying to grapple with who you are and what you want your life to be versus, you know, what everyone else wants your life to be, and not wanting to let down those around you who love about you and care about you. And how he managed kind of living or straddling in those two worlds at once is just gorgeous. So I'm going to start the second one now, and I will say that like from here on out I'm going to be giving spoilers for the first book, just because I think it's going to be really hard to talk about the second book without talking about like the ending of the first book. So this is your warning. And then I'm going to talk a bit about the ending of the first book, and then I'm going to go through the description of the second book. But just be aware of that I'm going to be like less spoiler sensitive for the first book now that I'm diving into the sequel. And with that being said, I want to touch on the fact that Ari's parents straight up sit him down, and they basically do that one clip from Death Day.
You never turning. You are gay!
They're just like, you're gay. You're in love with Dante, and you don't want to admit it, so we're going to sit you down and be like, honey, you gotta go get your mans. Like, this is what's happening. Which I think is really different and really unique in, like, queer YA. Because, like, a lot of the times it's this huge coming out story and, like, trying to be ready to tell your parents and trying to talk to them. And especially, like, for the time period that the book is set in, it's, like, so refreshing to read a story where Dante's parents just accept him. They're more upset that he wasn't comfortable telling them, or that he had any sort of fear about letting them down or disappointing them. Especially now that they're having a kid, Dante was kind of like, oh, well, you know, their hopes for grandkids can be put in that kid. Like, he has to be a boy and he has to like girls. And then thinking about the way that like Ari isn't even like thinking about that as a possibility for himself, but like also just accept and embraces it in Dante. And like when Dante asks him, you know, like, I need you to be loyal with me, like I need you to stand by me no matter what, like you can't walk away from me when things get difficult. And like, oh, like the way that just like reaches inside me and is like I'm so like, that's such a strong friendship, and that's such a strong love for another person to like have that loyalty and recognize like, you know, things are gonna get hard and I need you to stick with me through them because I can't lose you. And that's just one of the things that's so beautiful about their friendship and ultimately their relationship. The only thing I did struggle with a little bit is there's this idea that what Ari feels for Dante is more, which unfortunately like is a very common thing within like the amatonormative narrative that we live in, is this idea that you wouldn't jump in front of a car to shove your best friend out of the way, but like that's something you would do for someone you love. And I'm like, I like don't like when books do that, where they kind of like put romantic love above platonic love, and I was a little bit frustrated with that. But I mean, that's something that's so common across literature that I hate to say like I'm kind of expected it or I'm used to it, but I'm really curious to see where their story is going to go, because really the end of the story, the end of the first book, is just another beginning. And so with that, I checked the sequel, Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World, is about 150 pages longer. But I'm also really nervous because it's their senior year of high school. You know, this idea that after he fell in love with Dante, it cracked something open in him that he can't get away from. He's suddenly reaching out to new friends, standing up to bullies of all kind, and making his voice heard. And always there is Dante, dreamy, witty Dante, who can get on Ari's nerves and fill him with desire all at once. The boys are determined to forge a path for themselves in a world that doesn't understand them, but when Ari is faced with a shocking loss, he'll have to fight like never before to create a life that is truthfully, joyfully his own. And this is what scares me, because that idea of a shocking loss, I'm very attached to both Ari's mom and dad, even Legs. Like, I'm a little scared about like what this loss is going to be and how they're going to navigate that, and just emotionally for myself. I don't want to lose any of these characters. So with that being said, this video is getting way too long in the middle of a reading vlog, so I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to go finish copying out the rest of the quotes from Aristotle and Dante into my notebook, and then I will get started on this one. Okay, so I'm just shy of 100 pages into the book, and it's definitely got a different vibe to it. Ari is in like full-on gay crisis, which is understandable because it seems like this book is going to deal more with the realities of what it means to be a teenager, like in the midst of the AIDS epidemic. And I think he's having like a really hard time of wrapping his head around like the complexities and also that realities of like opening up all of the emotions that you've been keeping inside and then being overwhelmed by all of them at once is a whole thing. But the one thing that's like a little bit odd to me is I was very wrong about Ari being gay, because he's now incredibly horny all the time, which is totally fine. We're sex positive here, but it just feels like such strong whiplash from the Ari that I got to know in the first book, and like from some of that sensitivity or nervousness around those topics of the first book. Could just be my aceness showing, I'm not really sure. But yeah, the kind of the thing in this book is they're gonna get to go on a camping trip together. I still haven't figured out what that loss is that Ari's going to face, so we'll see. I'm gonna do a little bit more reading tonight and then head to bed. Hello, a whole day has come by. I'm back in my bed and I'm gonna do some more reading before I go to bed again, and I'm trying to figure out how I feel about this book. I think it's just that the vibes are very different from the first book, and I like still haven't really gotten the rhythm of it. I'm still terrified about whatever the strange loss is gonna be, and you know, Ari's making some friends, building some connections, and I'm really happy about that, but I'm just trying to figure out where we're going. I guess I haven't like felt like, okay, this is why we needed this sequel yet. So we'll see if some of my questions get answered. So after that reading last night, I finally got to the point where I figured out what this big loss is that Aristotle's going to be facing. And to be fair, I think it's a little rude to put that on the flap and not have that happen until 350 pages into a 550 page book. And I think that's how I feel about this whole story, is it feels very choppy. I've found 2 typos in the print already. One time where it said Ari and it was supposed to say Dante, which I'm like, that's a pretty glaring typo. And I'm having a hard time with it, and I'm trying to figure out if that's like a me thing or if that's like a book thing. And I think the thing is like, okay, Aristotle and Dante discover the secrets of the universe. It's about Ari. It's about him struggling to like realize who he is, dealing with like this self-hatred that he has in himself, all this anger and this emotion that he doesn't know where to put it, feeling disconnected from his parents, from his family, from his brother who's in prison, and all of that accumulating and being like pulled forward through his relationship with Dante. Dante, who's struggling in similar ways and different ways, but is willing to confront that, and then ultimately coming together at the end with, you know, a love confession and the two of them kissing and ending up together. And in this book, it just feels like there's so much hurt and it's all over the place and it doesn't make any sense. Like, a very small spoiler, you can skip over this if you would like, just jump like 10 seconds ahead. There is a character that we meet once, and then out of nowhere, we have a one-page scene of them being at his funeral. We're not told how he died, we're not told like how they found out that he died. It's kind of implied that it's suicide, and then it's very briefly brought up later in the book, and that's it. And I'm like, this is such a terrible way to deal with such a sensitive topic. But also, like, I don't understand why it's there, because it doesn't seem to add anything to the narrative. And I feel like that's how the whole book is. Like, we just keep getting these scenes of, like, pain and bullying and, like, internalized homophobia, and I don't understand where it's culminating or, like, where it's coming to. And on top of that, we just got some very blatant foreshadowing all of a sudden before this very sudden and very traumatic death. That, like, I'm not gonna lie, I was tearing up last night while I was reading it, but I just don't get where, like, what I'm supposed to be getting from this story. And, like, even the writing, like, sometimes it seems way too heavy-handed at times with what it's trying to say, and other times it seems to be meandering around something that, like, I don't know what the point is supposed to be. I don't know if this is, like, him trying to deal with, you know, that lost feeling of, you know, being a gay teen in the midst of the AIDS crisis, but, like, it doesn't even feel like that's the central narrative either. Like, I don't really know what the central narrative or issue is. I'm very confused. I have 200 pages left, and honestly, last night there was a couple times where I was thinking about DNFing it. I think I kept going because I really wanted to figure out what the sudden loss was going to be, but there was just so much that I didn't understand, or, like, I was very confused on where the narrative was going and why it was taking the direction that it was taking. I feel like it's missing that heart that was underlying the very real pain in the first book. Stay tuned. Now that I only have 200 pages left, I'm gonna force myself to get through it. Hopefully it turns around at the end. I really don't know. So I finished Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World. I think I got it right for once. And it got better, I have to say. I think, like, the last 200 pages, I kind of felt like it came together, and maybe that's just because Sanyas is really good at, like, writing grief and kind of, like, exploring that process that was done really well. Honestly, don't feel like it was a book about Aristotle and Dante, to be honest with you. Maybe it was, and I'm missing something, but especially the way that things kind of came together at the end, like, I needed more from it. I think honestly, like, my review is gonna basically be summed up as, like, did I need it? No. Am I mad that I have it? Also no. So, like, a very meh thing where it, like, has these really good poignant moments, but it's just so cobbled together with scraps of the rest of the story that, like, I was lost for most of it, or, like, not necessarily lost, but I just didn't know what I was supposed to be, like, garnering from it. And I really liked some of the characters they brought in. Like, I really liked Cassandra. I liked that we got to see more of Gina and Susie, but, like, I wish I got more Aristotle and Dante. I just feel like it wasn't really a book about them and their relationship, and I wanted more of that. Like, it seemed to be more about, like, Ari struggling with their relationship. So the first book is so much better than I thought it was going to be, and the second book was kind of rough. I'm, like, really curious to go online, read some reviews, hear what other people are saying about it, because I've already been seeing it, like, getting put on a ton of book lists and, like, be really well received by people. So I don't know if there's, like, something that I'm missing, or, like, maybe I just wasn't focused enough on the story to, like, try and understand what the author was doing. I'd be super curious to hear feedback from other people who read it, but I don't want to say a ton more about it because a lot of the things that I do want to talk about it are very spoilery related. So I'm going to leave it here, and feel free to comment down below with what you think about the books. Yeah, I think that's it. Thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe so that you get, and ring the bell so you get notifications when I update. And until the next video, stay kind.